Hello, friends. The 876th day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. The Ukrainian armed forces announced today that they are maintaining bridgeheads on the eastern bank of the Dnipro in the Kherson region. In particular, in the Krynky area, from which many media outlets announced their withdrawal yesterday. However, Telegram channels and the media continue to insist that Krynky has been abandoned. This was reported by the Zelensky info publication. According to it, the fighting left the coastal village and moved to the islands. Citing police data, journalists write that 4 Ukrainian fighters were dying in Krynky every day. A total of 788 are missing and 262 are considered dead. As Deep State writes, the retreat of the last fighters from the eastern bank took place back in June, and with heavy losses. On June 17, 5 fighters were killed when they hit a dugout. 6 retreated to the island, but only 1 survived, and visual contact with him was lost. Operations continue on the islands adjacent to Krynky, but the problem is the significant concentration of Russian manpower. Over time, they will occupy most of the islands or the part that is less exposed to fire, Deep State believes. The Telegram channel believes that the Russians may be trying to create a bridgehead on the western bank of the Dnipro. The bridgehead and most of the ridiculous orders to hold the bridgehead in Krynky are associated with the recently dismissed commander of the Joint Forces Sudal. The bridgehead was not reinforced, but only supported. This means that sooner or later the operation will be curtailed and no one will advance on Parakop. In fact, this is what happened in June, Deep State believes. Zelensky info, citing fighters, writes that hell was happening for them in Krynky. Most of those responsible for the evacuation say that the defense of Krynky was initially an extremely difficult task with limited resources. And since the end of winter, holding these positions has become a one-way trip for many. Boats often could not take the wounded, and it happened that soldiers lay with hastily amputated limbs for 10 days, waiting for evacuation. During evacuation flights, the death toll was in the dozens. Many boats did not come. It happened that guys lay with severed limbs for 10 days, and the boats could not approach us. We had a very experienced doctor. He tried to stabilize everyone. Only 2 did not survive. Once we were waiting for evacuation, we were poisoned with gas. We all ran out, but the medic did not have time to get out. He was poisoned with gas and he died, says one of the soldiers. Meanwhile, hundreds of Ukrainians are searching for their relatives who fought in Krynky through social networks. According to these people, the commanders of the Ukrainian armed forces told them that their son or husband was missing, and their bodies were not found. According to relatives, their fellow soldiers saw them dead, but were unable to retrieve their bodies from the eastern bank. Despite this evidence, many of those missing in Krynky have never been officially recognized as dead. One of the mothers was told by the commander of the unit, where her son served, "Get over it, light a candle, he died," although the documents do not list the soldier as dead. Moreover, the woman says that she received greetings from her son for 2 months after he was thrown into Krynky and stopped communicating. Many soldiers also refused to go to defend Krynky. Court verdicts on this matter continue to appear in the Register of Court Decisions. The Ukrainian publication, Strana, spoke with several Marines of the Ukrainian armed forces who defended the bridgehead in the village of Krynky on the eastern bank of the Dnipro for about a year. Our separate Marine battalion was the first to enter Krynky. The initial task was to enter the eastern bank, prepare and hold a bridgehead there for 5 days. During this time, reinforcements and heavy equipment were supposed to arrive. Then it was planned to launch an offensive in the direction of Skadovsk, cutting off the rear of the Russian troop group that was stationed on the eastern bank of the Dnipro. The plan was ambitious, but it did not work. In October, we had full information about the location of the Russian defense in Krynky. Our landing was a surprise for the Russians. They retreated. We entered the Olshki forest on their shoulders, almost reached the highway without equipment, only with small arms and drones. 5 days later, the Russians came to their senses and drove us out of the forest. We only had control of Krynky itself. In the first 5 days, they were unable to transport equipment to us, although we gained time. Most likely, there was a logistics error, and they were unable to erect pontoons. Therefore, for the rest of the months, we simply held defense. We were simply ironed out with artillery and guided air bombs. It all started well but ended badly. Instead of a brilliant breakthrough, the bridgehead in Krynky became a black hole in which we wore down a huge number of people. According to our calculations, significantly more than 1,000 soldiers fell there as 200s, about whom the media now writes as dead and missing, said the Marine officer. During the first 2 weeks after our landing in Krynky, it was still possible to build on our success and push the Russians out of the forest and cut off the route. But our breakthrough never began. By the end of November, Krynky had been virtually wiped off the face of the earth. Krynky became a Potemkin village for the generals, a staging area for reports. Like, "Look how great we are, heroically holding the eastern bank, no matter what." For ordinary Marines, Krynky became a place from which they do not return. It was a real hell there, shelling around the clock. Many there went crazy from hopelessness. Firstly, just getting to Krynky from the western bank was a great stroke of luck. After the first 5 days, the Russians had already completely zeroed in on the floodplain of the Dnipro and the Konka River. First, under fire, you have to cross the Dnipro, then another 60 meters of the Konka River. Not every boat made it, many were sunk along the way. Getting back was also quite a challenge. You could only leave if you were wounded or slightly wounded. It was extremely difficult to get the seriously wounded out of there, so the number of 788 missing that appeared on the internet is not final. I am sure that many more were missing, admitted the senior sergeant of the Marine Corps. And not only about Krynky, but also in other parts of the front, the military of the armed forces of Ukraine are increasingly criticizing the command for high losses. Military psychologist Kozynchuk said live on Ukrainian television that brigade commanders of the armed forces of Ukraine were often punished for losing positions, giving the order to hold them at any cost. If you kept the position, but at the same time 200 people were wounded or killed, you got away with it. The priorities were strange. Save every life of a soldier, this is what they said on Facebook and YouTube. But in person they said, hold at any cost, I don't care how many people you kill, says Kozynchuk. I would like to add that recently the Ukrainian command has been increasingly criticized for orders that lead to large losses. I have not touched on this topic, but if they are already talking about it on television, then I think I can talk about it too. The Ukrainian armed forces today officially confirmed for the first time their withdrawal from Yevhenii in the Berdyansk direction. The defense forces, due to the fact that the enemy destroyed almost everything in Yevhenii, retreated to other positions. The positions of the Ukrainian defenders were destroyed, and keeping personnel, there was a threat to the lives of our military, said Voloshin, spokesman for the Kortitsia Group. Earlier, the loss of Yevhenii was reported by the media and experts, and also by the Russians. Meanwhile, the Russian army may be preparing a new offensive in the neighboring Zaporizhia region. This was stated by Andriy Yushchenko, advisor to the mayor of Mariupol. If we take into account the trend of the last week, we see that the enemy is again concentrating in the Zaporizhia region, and this time we can say that they are pulling troops from different regions, from Novozovsk and Donetsk. They are moving towards the Zaporizhia region, no longer through Berdyansk or Primorsk. Most often, this is the direction of Rozivka, Logi, Tokmak, Andriy Yushchenko said. Russian troops also advanced in Kalinivka, to the north of Chasiv Yar in the Bakhmut direction. In the last video, I said that the Russians managed to advance to the Orlova tract, but as we see, the enemy has advanced much further. I note that Kalinivka is not mentioned in the General Staff reports. Friends, this channel exists solely thanks to your support. If you have the opportunity and desire to support the channel, I will be very grateful to you. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.